Hey everybody, it's my birthday, and to celebrate, here's my review of Far Cry for PC. This is the game that put CryTek on the map. It's a first-person shooter that was released in 2004, which was a really weird year for that, because Half-Life 2 and Doom 3 came out that exact same year. So this thing was going up against the absolute giants, and somehow, some way, it managed to propel itself to the top. Now, it wasn't as well selling as those two games, in particular Half-Life 2, of course, but it received some of the highest reviews that you would see of first-person shooters that year, partly because of it being a technical marvel of the time, with its really big draw distances and extremely high graphical fidelity for the time, as well as just being a really polished game, so to speak. So the question is there truth to that? Is it really a well-polished game, or were they just too overshadowed by the graphical fidelity and the technical marvel of this game to really get into the nitty-gritty of the gameplay? Well, when you talk about the presentation, you have to keep in mind that in 2004, this game looked absolutely amazing for a variety of reasons. The first one being, of course, the draw distance. It's basically a couple of miles that you can actually see out and go across the island and such, with no load times. So you can literally go from one end of the island to the other if you really wanted to, and the game would pretty much let you, unless you came across like a mountain or something that got in your way. But the draw distance is enough that you could actually do that. On top of this, the foliage is dense enough and detailed enough that it really feels like you're going through this kind of living jungle. Now, granted, there aren't a lot of animals running around or anything, but still, the jungle itself is this very nicely detailed environment that even today does not look bad at all. It's a little bit dated, of course, but that's because it was from 2004. There are a few things that are universal, though. One of these being the animations, which occasionally are a little bit clunky looking, but it's nothing that'll just really throw you off or anything. It's just, you notice it and it's like, it's kind of stylized and a little bit cheesy, but oh well, I can put that past me. But other than that, the only really bad things about the graphics are that it's just aged. It's from 2004. The modeling isn't as top-notch as it used to be. The textures aren't as high-res as they used to be. So, by no means does it look bad anymore, but again, you have to keep in mind, in 2004, this game looked amazing. Now it just looks kind of average, and that's okay. As far as the sound design goes, they also did a really good job with that, but there's one particular issue in this thing that you really notice right off the bat. Voice acting in this game isn't very good. In fact, it's kind of bad, actually. It's cheesy, it's just ridiculous accents here and there, and of course, just weird tones of voices. So when someone's sounding surprised, they don't actually sound surprised. What the hell do we do now? And stuff like that. It's nowhere near as bad as, say, Resident Evil, but it's still pretty bad voice acting. As far as the rest of the sound goes, the music is okay. It's mostly kind of environmental stuff that just kind of sets an atmosphere. This kind of tropical atmosphere going on. And that's really all it needs to do. Occasionally you'll get some drum music going on when you're doing the combat sequences, but other than that, it really doesn't change up all that much, and you never really notice it all that much. Instead, you're paying attention to the rest of the sound design, where the effects themselves are really vital to your gameplay. I mean, they did a really good job at making the sounds not only be able to be heard, but they sound different depending on how far away you are, depending on what the enemy's doing, and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of nice effects with that. So they did a really good job with the sound effects themselves, but the rest of the sound design is kind of eh. And of course the voice acting being kind of crappy. But anyway. Ultimately it comes down to story and gameplay though, and that's something that CryTek seems to have forgotten when they made Crysis, but anyway. In Far Cry, the plot revolves around you playing as a guy named Jack Carver. He's a former U.S. Special Forces operative that now runs a boat charter business. And so he's hired to take this woman named Val to this uncharted island in Micronesia. When he gets there, she goes off on a jet ski and his boat gets blown up by mercenaries. And so he has to now survive and fight his way through the mercenaries in order to not only find out what's going on, but also get Val back. And it goes on to involve this mutagen created by Dr. Krieger, and of course he's the pretty typical mad scientist, And that's kind of it. I mean, it gets really stupid really quickly once the mutagen stuff is introduced. But the thing is, you don't really care. Apart from having to fight mutants, then it doesn't really bother you. I mean, the mutants can be really annoying if you let them, but the story itself is almost meant to be cheesy. And there's never this sense throughout the game where it's trying to be taken seriously. I mean, there's constant just joke kind of stuff thrown in there, in particular with dialogue between mercenaries and such like that. So it's just kind of played for laughs, even though it's serious enough that it's supposed to hold the game together. But other than that, it's pretty ridiculous. And they seem to acknowledge this and just allow you to immerse yourself in the gameplay more than anything else. And the gameplay is the really interesting part of this thing, because it takes the first-person shooter model and changes it considerably. Whereas before, you would just running guns blazing, and it would probably be pretty linear and such like that. This is a pretty open FPS, and there are a few linear sections, of course, in particular indoors. But there's a huge amount of space in this game. And that draw distance is used to full effect. I mean, you can snipe enemies from basically over a mile away if you really want to. And the game basically rewards you for doing that by making the game a little easier on you. So you take out that guy from a mile away. Now you don't have to deal with him anymore when you get in closer, and he can actually take you out. So it's an interesting style where you can kind of choose how you want to play. If you want to run in guns blazing, you can. It's probably not a good idea, but you can do it. And that's a good way to get the full wrath of the enemy coming down on you and running out of ammo very quickly and such like that. So what you'll probably end up doing is sneaking around a lot more, taking advantage of the stealth elements of this game. I mean, you can throw rocks and distract enemies, and they'll be like, what was that noise? Go over there to where the rock landed and investigate, and then you can sneak past them. Or you can use quiet weaponry, like the machete or the suppressed SMG, and you can take out enemies quickly and quietly, while the rest of the enemies just kind of mill about and don't notice unless the guy was right in front of them or something. And so the stealth plays a big factor in this game. Also, the draw distance plays a big factor in this game. There's a lot of vehicle segments in this game. At no point do you ever need a vehicle per se, but they're really handy to have for the most part. So, for instance, there's one level where it allows you to get a glider at the very beginning, and I can't see not using the glider. I mean, it's just a good idea. But you don't really have to choose the glider if you don't really want to. But anyway, the crazy bits about this game, though, are that when you actually get your weapons at the start, you get a machete and a pistol. And the pistol proves one very big thing about this game. All of the weapons are viable. It just depends on how you use them and when you get them. For instance, toward the end of the game, you will find that there are additional assault rifles available to you other than the one you get at the very beginning. And they have their own ups and downs, like they get grenade launchers, but they seem to do less damage to some degree. Or maybe it's just that the enemies you're fighting by then are just really tough. Either way, that kind of thing happens. And so you'll start prioritizing things. You'll have to pick, do I want to be stealthy here, or do I want to be just fully firepower, or whatever. And so there's actually a fairly bit of just intelligence thrown into this game, and you don't really expect that from a first-person shooter. On top of this, the enemy AI is surprisingly competent. They will notice you. They will investigate sounds that you make, and that's one really big thing about this game. You have to pay a lot of attention to the sounds you're making and not make a lot of noise, because they will notice this, and they will come after you. So that's something to keep in mind. And so not only that, but they'll take cover. They'll work in groups. And this was one of those early games that really had that big push for AI and FPSs. This would be done again with Fear, of course, but Fear being better in terms of AI. But this game was known for having really good AI for the time. And even today, it's not completely boneheaded AI like you see in a lot of modern military FPSs. So it's kind of a weird game. You don't really expect it to be all that great. I mean, it is CryTek's first game. They just came out of nowhere and put this thing together. There's no-name German developer. And all of a sudden, they put this game out. It's a technical milestone for the time. You expect it to be kind of suffering on the gameplay department, but it doesn't. In fact, it's really, really fun. That freedom of choice to go and do things the way you want to do them. I mean, if you want to run in guns blazing, feel free. If you want to sneak around, feel free. If you want to find an alternate route, feel free. I mean, the game lets you swim pretty much wherever you want, or get in a boat or something like that. And if you really want to, you can literally go around the entire island to where you need to go, just by boat or something. Now, you don't always get the chance to do this, of course, but there's a lot of levels where it pretty much lets you do that. And so it's just such an interesting game. And on top of that, it's just really fun to play, even though it does get kind of stupid at times, even though there are a few segments that are fairly linear, and those don't last very long. It never does anything for long enough or badly enough that it becomes a detriment. Even the cheesy and kind of bad voice acting, even the stupid storyline, are not enough to be negatives to this game. Hence why it gets a 4.5 out of 5. Thanks for watching.